Not sure if anybody can hear me, but if you can, I should be streaming. How you doing, Ken? You alright, mate? Can you hear me all right? Sorry, I'm just going to need a few minutes until I get this sorted out because I've cancelled a service that I don't need. Trading futures live. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, wicked. All right, brilliant, fantastic. Yeah, I need to. What I need to do is I need to edit this, and then I need to take off the. Just change that to. I don't know how. I need to remove. Yeah, I'll use that one, Bitcoin Rally. Yeah, okay. Sorry, one second, guys. I'll be with you in a sec. I'm just changing the thumbnail because it's. You need to change the video resolution. The current resolution is which is not supported for this configuration. No one cares. All right, cool. So, I'm just going to leave that for now. And I want to share the stream to a few places. And then we'll start. I'm not going to be on long. I just want to do a few tests, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about. You can now put people in timeout. Ooh, awesome. All right, cool. So I've got you guys there on one side. Perfect. So I can see the chat. Lovely. All right. So again, I just want to quickly go over a few things. Can you see my chart? All right, I've just did a quick test. I'm delayed by about four seconds, right? So when I talk, obviously I'm delayed by about 4 seconds. So as expected, I was talking about this in the last update that I did, which was yesterday, I believe. And I was saying that we're probably headed towards this level, right? 37,417. No surprise at all, you know, considering the strength of this move, you know, or at least the perceived strength of this move, right? And I want to be clear before I carry on, because there's many times that I talk about these things and people are like, oh, you know, you're so negative and da 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 da, and you know, whatever. But we have to look at everything, you know, holistically. You can't just look at Bitcoin and say, if you're just trading Bitcoin or investing in Bitcoin, fine. You know, no big deal. You're not really concerned about what the alts are doing. You're not really concerned about what Binance is doing. You're not concerned about anything. You're just concerned about Bitcoin, and that's it, right? And that's why when you look at this, you're saying, great, fantastic, brilliant move. But then when you start to dig a little bit deeper, you start to realize that perhaps Bitcoin moving on its own, as I said in the video or in the previous live, it's only one of two things. It can only ever be one of two things. Either Bitcoin is completely on its own page now and that's it, off it goes, or Bitcoin is being manipulated, you know, and the rest of the market not moving, which is what we're seeing, you know, is a good indication that this move could potentially just be, you know, a byproduct of either manipulation, you know, a lack of liquidity. So, you know, it's easier to move the market when there's not enough, you know, not enough liquidity, because less, you know, means more movement when there's no liquidity, you know, and these types of things. So, like I said, I'm expecting 37,417. Might pop a little bit higher than that, but then we also run into this big mess here, right? So we also need to be mindful of this. It's not just going to keep running straight through this. If it does, and this is where it becomes really challenging for people to have the patience to wait for, you know, for what I'm about to say now. And then I'm going to go over the alts in a second, and Binance and etc. But for now, I just want to focus predominantly on Bitcoin. If this continues, right, and we go all the way up here, in the 40s, 42, 43, 45, and so on, right? Then that will be enough of a move to then consider a pullback much more viable, right, to buy into Bitcoin, right? You guys know that I've said many, many times, and this is my own personal preference. I don't care what anybody else is saying. I don't care what anybody else is doing. Not interested, right? I didn't want to buy down here at the 15s. You know, in hindsight, you could look at it and say, wow, that's amazing. I don't do that. I wanted 14 or lower. Didn't give it to me, right? So obviously, we've had a really nice run since then. And now we're up in the 36s, 37s, potentially going into the 40s. So when it pulls back, I'm more than happy if I'm confident and I see what I want to see on a pullback and structurally it makes sense with everything else that's going on globally going into probably next year. I'm more than happy to buy in the 30s, right? Because the expectation has never been for a run to, you know, a 2K run or a 5K run or anything like that. The expectation has always been, going back 2.5 years as I was discussing this, that Bitcoin reaches a minimum of 100K, right? And I still maintain that I've always believed that Bitcoin has the potential to hit 100K. It's reasonable, it makes sense, it's not ridiculous, you know, and there's a lot of variables, right, that could get Bitcoin to 100K. So a pullback for me in the 30s, picking up Bitcoin in the 30s makes absolute sense, assuming that market conditions are there and Bitcoin is showing the strength that I would need to see to purchase in this, in this area. So ideally, what I'm trying to get at is, let's say it kind of runs into the 40s and then we start to get a little bit of a pullback, right? Something similar to this. I don't know. I mean, we'll just try and make it clean or whatever, but basically something like this. And then you get a little bit of a run up, something like this, and then we start to run a little bit higher. The idea here structurally is you want to be focused on, as Bitcoin is doing this, and this is, we're making an assumption, right? So we're making an assumption that we get something like this, that Bitcoin starts to, or continues to run up into the 40s, then it starts to pull back. It creates a really nice structure down here. All the same analysis applies what I was talking about, this move here. And obviously it could go as far or as low as in the 27s and still maintain this structure for a bullish move. But then you have this level down here, which would be in play, 24,770. Sorry, 24,770. But the point being is, if we get something similar to this, this is the area where you want to consider, or what I will be considering and focused on, right, to be picking up Bitcoin. Because then if this is correct and all of the above are in play, then we're talking about a continuation that's going to go into the 50s and 60s and 70s, with its own pullbacks and its own changes and potentially little crashes and whatever, but eventually punching through all-time high and going into the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100,000. And that would all tie in nicely to this kind of so-called halving and everything that's going to happen there. And I say so-called because a lot of people just assume, because the halving's coming, because apparently these ETFs are coming and everything else, that Bitcoin is just going to rally forever, right? But you have to be realistic about what that looks like from a monetary standpoint. The circulating supply, how much money is there, and so on and so on and so on. So, with all of that said, that's roughly what I'm looking for. Now, if that doesn't happen, right, and we potentially get something like this, right, and maybe a little bit of a rally, something like this, and then something like this, let's say it reverses. It's a bit messy, but let's say it reverses, and we start to continue to punch lower. Let's say we get somewhere around here, 26 to 27, right? As far as I'm concerned, at that point, this level will absolutely be in play, right? 24,770, and then the whole kind of cycle starts again. As it goes down there, it hits this level, then it starts to reject, and and then this liquidity pull down here between 19,553 and 22,409 would then be the place where price would need to run into, right, to either pick up buy side liquidity or do some sort of distribution and then continue going lower. It's very easy at this moment to look at 36, 37,000 and think there is absolutely no way that Bitcoin is going to, touch these levels down here ever again, 15K, 17K, and so on. And I would caution that we have seen many occasions, where we've seen an all-time high up here at 69,000, or this one here, when it was roughly around about 65,000. So the first one, 65,000. You know, we had a flipping drop all the way down to, you know, oh, sorry guys, let me just mute that. Let me just go forward. And again, any questions, just throw them out there. I'll see them on the screen. But we had a move of around about 55% drop. That was the first one, right? And if you go all the way back to some of these previous ones all the way down here, you know, the same applies, but we're just going to use the most recent ones. And then obviously the most recent all-time high came as low as a 77% drop, just based on some loose figures of what we're seeing here. So it is very possible, if we get up into the 40s, you know, that we end up doing a 50% move all the way back down to, you know, 20K. You know, this is something that we have to be, you know, that we have to be mindful of. We can't just assume that everything's rosy, you know, and that we will never see certain things again. What I'm trying to really kind of lay out here is anything is possible, and anything that we do, whether it's with Bitcoin or anything else, will always be a gamble, a risk, you know, and it has to be based on sound analysis, sound logic. Everybody invests in their own way, you know. I know people who, you know, purchase Bitcoin continually over and over and over and over again because their intention isn't to make huge sums of money. Their intention is to buy into something that they believe in. I also know people, not many, but I know people, you know, who have continued to buy Bitcoin on this drop, you know, kind of scaling in and scaling in. They've got terrible average costs all the way up in the 50s and 60s, yeah? And their intention is to hold over a long period of time to eventually end up with an insane amount of money, you know, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line. Now, obviously, 5 years, 10 years down the line, I mean, that is a completely different world, to be fair. So, again, everybody invests their own way, everybody does their own thing, but the reality will always be the same. You have to look holistically at everything that's happening. So that's Bitcoin. I'll just quickly go over Binance, but I'm going to tie Bitcoin into this because nice move on Bitcoin, right? We go over to Binance. Even with this, let me go back to Bitcoin, sorry. Even with this last punch up, yeah, from around about sort of 35 all the way up to sort of 37 almost, right? You would expect that Binance would be responding to that, and it simply isn't, you know. It moved from 245 to about 251, and then it's dipped again to 248, right? So what does that tell you? Let's look at this realistically. It tells you that potentially Bitcoin, you know, or at least money's flowing out of alts and flowing out of some of these other, you know, tokens and coins and going into Bitcoin, right? Then if you look at the correlation between Bitcoin and what's happening in the stock market, there are some slight correlations there, but ultimately the case to be made that Bitcoin is completely on its own page right now, you know, is very high. Right. So when we look at Binance like this and we look at some of the other alts and we look at some of the movement relative to what we're seeing on Bitcoin, it's simply not, and I repeat, it is simply not, yeah, showing a validation that we are in a very strong, you know, bull run to come. Especially going into the remainder of this year as things start to slow down, going into sort of mid-November to early December, things will start to slow down. There may be a little bit of volatility in the last 2 weeks of November going into the first week of December, and then it really starts to slow down for the Christmas period. So again, be mindful of this. This happens pretty much every year. It's not an absolute guarantee, but it is a very good general rule of thumb. And as such, because the correlation between the movement on Bitcoin and everything else in the market is pretty much null and void at the moment, right? We're not seeing alts moving. We're not seeing alts responding. We're not seeing relative movements, you know, to its standard, you know, sort of Bitcoin ADRs and, you know, the average daily range and the average weekly ranges and the average monthly ranges. Bitcoin is literally on its own page. So when you look at Binance or BNB, you know, the expectation is it's got plenty of movement to run into, you know, this complete imbalance here and then potentially running up into, you know, sort of 304 or plus 300. We haven't seen anything like that yet. We've seen a really nice run and it's literally just moving in sympathy or a byproduct of what's happening on Bitcoin and, you know, sort of generally in the cryptocurrency market. As such, because that's happening, it shows where the money is flowing and it shows the actual weakness within cryptocurrency as a whole. Binance, nothing. You know, some of the bigger players, in terms of meme coins, SHIB, you know, Dodge and so on, nothing, no real movement. Yeah, somebody mentioned Dodge recently about it being at sort of 33. That's not, I mean, if we go to the 4 hour, because it's the only way that we can really see this, that's not really sort of correlated movement with the entire cryptocurrency market if the dominance of Bitcoin is indeed in play. Yeah, so you use, you know, sort of Bitcoin as the benchmark. If Bitcoin's, or if the benchmark, i.e. Bitcoin in this case, is the precursor to something spectacular happening over the next 2 years, for example, on a multi-year bull run, we would see the effects of this on everything. Yeah, but we're not. Dodge, crap. You look at ADA, did move a little bit, to be fair. In all fairness, I have to be honest. ADA has actually moved relative to its, its structure. So that's not too bad, that one. But you look at SHIB, almost no movement. You look at Ethereum, yeah, it has moved. And again, it's relative to its own structure, but it's not showing that real, yes, the entire cryptocurrency market is in good shape, right? If you look at Matic, Matic pretty decent. So we're seeing odd coins and tokens starting to show a little bit of movement, but it's on the back end of Bitcoin having to really stretch. Yeah, it's not all moving in unison. Bitcoin has had to really stretch from the those sort of late 20s all the way up to 37,000, and the last portion of 2K is when we started to see that kind of over exhaustive movement right within the altcoins. It's almost like Bitcoin's saying, guys, come on, let's go, and the altcoins are like, yeah, we're just going to chill for a bit. We need to see more proof that the market is indeed moving in the direction that we believe it's moving in, and then they're just maybe starting to wake up, just maybe. But again, no real signs of overall, strength and overall sort of multi-year bull run in play. Yeah. So again, that's the analysis for today. Just wanted to go through a few things. I will quickly go over gold because there's been a little bit of a pullback on gold, but you want to focus on, somebody mentioned this to me in a DM saying, oh, gold this, gold that, and it was in reference to PaxG with the, with the LP funds. I'm really not concerned about this in any way, shape or form. If you look at gold, remember, I focus absolutely 100%, on the monthly and weekly timeframes in terms of overall analysis, right? I always do that. And because I'm focused predominantly on the higher timeframes, you have to remember when you're looking at the monthly chart, it takes a long time, for the monthly chart to to unfold. And you can see we've had this recent drop, really nice reversal last month, and now we're just kind of pulling in a little bit. And what's effectively happening is prices pulling down to basically pick up LP here, or the LP here, and the indication from what I'm seeing on gold, in terms of that overall continuation to the upside and punching through that sort of 2,100 level, that's where it's at. So really not concerned about this. It's literally just a question of letting the market filter out, and as the market starts to kind of pull back, gold, as it maintains these levels up here, and maintains its strength up here, will continue to run to the upside. Free Gender, what the hell are you doing up so early? I did not believe my YouTube when you told me you were listening. Yeah. Do you know what, man? Free Gender. I obviously appreciate, the I don't even know what that is. What is, the chat thing that you've just done. But yeah. So I wanted to start to kind of organize my time, if possible, just to just jump on really early and just, spend time just talking and ranting about the markets, going through a bunch of things, because the markets are really starting to liven up a little bit, and because the markets are starting to liven up. Yeah, and what Chris is saying, it is only 1 p.m. over here in the UK. So for me, I've been up for hours, obviously, at this point. But for you, if it's 6 a.m. for you, you're probably somewhere in the States, right? So the overall idea here is, as the market's starting to kind of liven up a bit and there's things to talk about, one of the things that I've always tried to avoid, or tried to avoid over the years, is to just jump on for no reason. There's many YouTubers out there and content creators that they spend a lot of time online and they have to effectively find something to talk about, because the YouTube income that they make is what keeps them going, right? And that's great. It's not a negative. I'm saying for them, they have to post videos, and I noticed the kind of the drop in their views. They get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, on their videos, and then all, like, over a period of time, because they're literally forcing content, the average viewer count then becomes 10k, 20k, and it's because it just becomes over exhaustive. It's like, well, how many times can you say Bitcoin is going to hit 37,417? So what I'm trying to do is I try to focus on only coming on when it makes sense for me to come on. because then it serves you guys better. I don't need the YouTube. It's nice. It's nice to make a little bit of money on YouTube. I used to make a lot of money on YouTube actually, but it's practically non-existent. I don't look to YouTube, for me to pay the bills, so to speak. So that affords me the ability to just jump on when it makes sense. Right now it makes sense. Bitcoin's having a really nice run. I do want to say one thing, because I had a chat recently with somebody who has kind of been following me for a long time, and he was like, he was trying to ascertain, or at least I don't want to say ascertain, he was trying to catch me out in a roundabout way, saying, you said this and now this has happened, right? And I said to him, if you go back all the way to maybe 3 years ago when I first started talking about Bitcoin, there's a particular chart that I used to post when Bitcoin, did its first run, and I was saying it is going to get back down to 20K, and I made a reference to that miles, like years in advance, right? Because it was just the way things were kind of, playing out. And I reminded him of this. I said, I have been very clinical and very careful about how I'm producing content and then delivering that to people, because I don't want anybody jumping in at 15K or jumping in at 37K or looking to short up here or looking to buy where I've said I'm going to be looking to buy, and all of this sort of stuff. I've always maintained the same thing. Always. I said, I need to ascertain whether or not, and we did this twice. For those that were paying attention, and I know many of you were, we did it twice. This moved down. I was saying, is this a rally in a downtrend or is this a turning point? And we ascertained roughly around about here. If you remember, I was saying, nope, I'm absolutely 100% convinced now that this is a rally in a downtrend, and we're going to continue going lower. Hence this movement. And it's the same that applies to this. If we go back up to the monthly on Bitcoin, because it is the benchmark at the moment, I'm trying to ascertain whether or not this is a rally in a continued downtrend, right? Or whether this is a turning point. And you can look at this and say, well, that's a pretty elongated move. Do you know how many times I've seen in the Forex market, right, where price has ran like this all the way up into a rebalance point, and then it's literally come all the way back down, and taken out everything. Yeah, I've seen it so many times on lower time frames, higher time frames, over multiple years, over multiple months, over multiple weeks, over multiple days, right? And we've got to remember as well, when you see a drop like this and then a rally, yeah, and then another drop like this and then a rally, you look at it and you say, well, that drop and this rally is relative to this drop and this rally. Well, no, because you have to take the entire move now. This rally that's happening on Bitcoin right now is relative to this entire move, yeah, because it's fractal, not just that drop and then this rally is one part of the move and then this drop and this rally is another part of the move. Absolutely not. It's the entire thing. What you're seeing is this. This is what you're seeing, right? Because then it gives you the correct ranges. Yeah, you can't look at this now, having done that, and say it's anything less than a 78% move, right? And then a 138% rally, right? So what I'm saying is it's literally from top to this bottom, we're about halfway back up. Not from top to bottom, we've almost negated the full move, yeah? Three quarters on the way up. That is a massive distinction to make, and this is where a lot of people get it wrong when you're doing high time frame analysis, and then they end up getting caught out on range trading or situations where they end up getting in way too early, and it's a timing thing. This is 100% why people get the timing in the market completely wrong, because they're working with the wrong range. So anyway, it is what it is. I can say any likes gold. Yeah, I absolutely love gold. I'm very confident. With what's going on gold. What do you think about the stock market currently? That will influence crypto movements, right? It should do, yeah. I mean, if you think about the Nasdaq, and we'll look at the futures because it's a little bit easier in terms, like if I just show you the Nasdaq like this, we drop down to the daily, you see all of these kind of gaps. It's a little bit crazy. But if we look at the futures, pretty much the same, but we have a much more a much easier flow, right? When we're looking at doing some analysis. So, I mean, just looking at this, I can say probably 15K, 15.5, 50. We'll probably get up to around about, where's that rebalance point? Let me see here. Low of 15.643. So yeah, I mean 15.5, 15.6. It is looking like we'll get that secondary pop here. That's a complete negation. If we just drop up to the week or jump up to the weekly chart, you can see pretty much the same thing as what we saw on gold a minute ago, right? You see that drop, you see the reversal, and you see that continuation to the upside. To probably jump into this area over here in the 16s. And the reason for all of this is because when you kind of tie this into the cryptocurrency market, the Nasdaq predominantly is the one that's correlated mostly to cryptocurrency, i.e., tech, right? Excuse me, i.e., the tech side of things. So at the end of the day, it is about keeping a tabs on that correlation, right? Before, if we go back maybe about a year and a half, the correlation between the Nasdaq and Bitcoin was quite high. Nasdaq would move, Bitcoin would move. It wasn't an absolute one for one, but it was pretty good, right? Whereas now, it's almost like Bitcoin literally has just ran off on its own and said, "See you later." So we're not seeing that definite correlation now. That tie-in, that Bitcoin and Nasdaq, or Nasdaq and the cryptocurrency market, that correlation or that tie-in together isn't as pronounced as it used to be. I think probably what's going to happen, and this is kind of a loose idea, it's like the S&P. You look at the S&P and you say, okay, the S&P really is the barometer, for the US stock market, right? That's generally the one that most people go to. The Dow is kind of known for its overextended movements and, just bullshit air movements, and then the Nasdaq will always be predominantly focused on, how strong or weak the tech sector is, which may seem like an obvious thing to say, but I'm saying it in relation to what we're seeing on the S&P. The same applies to the S&P, Nasdaq, and the Dow as it does to the stock market and cryptocurrency. And let me explain. When you look at the three, the Dow, the SPYs, and the Nasdaq, right? Or the SPY and the Nasdaq, right? The S&P is the one that's the barometer. When you look at the US stock market, it's the S&P. When you look at the correlation between the S&P and cryptocurrency, you don't see it. You have to jump over to the Nasdaq to see that, right? But the overall strength or weakness of the stock market will predominantly come from the S&P, which means if you can ascertain what's happening with the S&P and don't worry too much about the overshoot on the tech sector, i.e. the Nasdaq, or the nonsense that the Dow Jones doing, this will give you, i.e. this, the S&P, will give you a much better indication as to the overall global strength, right, of the entire economic standing of every country in the world. Now that seems insane, but that is an absolute fact. So I look at the S&P like this, and I'm going to show you not side by side, but I'm going to do this, right? You can see the overextended nature, right, of the Nasdaq. You can see that tech is running a little bit, right? Whereas the S&P is showing a little bit more weakness and showing a little bit more overall weakness when it comes to the entire stock market. When we do the Dow is the same. So of these three, and I'm going to keep cycling through from the Dow to the S&P to the Nasdaq, you can see it straight away. The Nasdaq is overextended slightly. It's just pushing ahead, right? And because of that, it's very easy to look at the Nasdaq and say, yes, the overall US stock market is strong. No, it isn't. The tech sector is strong, which makes sense. The introduction of AI, the introduction of some of the things that Tesla's doing, the introduction of, new technologies and so on. There's a reason that the Nasdaq is overextended like this. Yeah, and when I say overextended, I'm saying in relationship to the Dow and the SPY, collectively as a three, right? But there's a reason that tech is running a little bit. It's a reason that we're seeing that on the, on the Nasdaq. And I'm going to go to the Dow again, then the S&P, then the Nasdaq, and then back to the S&P. This is really where it's at, right? The S&P is what we want to be focused on the most, and we are a pretty good way away, from even taking out 46, which was that recent pivot point or swing point. So, seeing what happens now going into the remainder of the year, you can see this and say, yeah, it's full negation. We're probably going to fill this gap, around about 44. That may very well happen today, and if so, that's fine, whatever. But again, it doesn't really change, the dynamic of what's happening on a much higher time frame. So to really answer your question, the stock market should influence cryptocurrency, but Bitcoin is literally on its own page. And then you kind of take it one step further and say, well, Bitcoin's on its own page, but unfortunately, we're not seeing the entire cryptocurrency market moving ahead with it. So it's a very interesting dynamic, very, very interesting dynamic. I've been up since 3 in the morning. I love that you're on when it makes sense. Can you please look up platinum? Let me see. Versus palladium. You have saved me so much money. I appreciate that, man. Platinum. And just to quickly see what AJ is saying. Morning, Jesse. What's the target short term? Target short term, if you're talking about Bitcoin, it's 37,417. If you're talking about the stock market, just looking at the S&P, I think short term target would be, going into the remainder of this year only, somewhere around here, between sort of 44 and 45, potentially at 46. But again, we'd have to see something pretty spectacular to really get this going, especially at this time of the year. Actually, do you know what I'll do? I'm going to use the VIX. Yeah, if I use this, and then I can't remember XPT. Yes. There we go. XPT USD. I don't want to use Oanda. Can't stand them. Pepperstone. Yeah, doesn't matter. We'll just use Oanda then. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yes, I remember now because I was doing some analysis for somebody in the Patreon. So let me just remove the drawings. Let's go up to the monthly, which we're already on. So yeah, I mean, look, Platinum is weak at the minute. It's already ran into, just do some very quick analysis. It's already ran into, right, actually, we need to be careful here because that's where it starts. We've already ran deep into this. So on the weekly, if you just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, there it is. I found it. So that's where it's really at. Right there. If it gets through this, you can see that that's the real move right there. So what I'm doing here is, if you look at the monthly chart, and I'll make the monthly a different color, just make it yellow, and then we'll make this one a color that really stands out, maybe perhaps blue. There we go. That's what I'm trying to ascertain. So what we're seeing here is, when you look at the monthly chart, you say, okay, price has kind of pulled back into a massive liquidity pool, right? And that massive liquidity pool, this move right here, this drop and this rally, so that swing point right there, around about 800, is running into an even bigger liquidity pool, right? And you try to tie all this together and you say, right, accumulation of buy side, and then it's come all the way back. So are we going to see a push from this, right? If we can ascertain, and let's just do a rough calculation. Let's just say there's 100, this is going to be a bit stupid, but 100 units bought here, another 100 units bought here, and then this one, is it distribution, sell side, or is it buy side? Let's say it's 50 buy, right? So if it's 50 buy, that's an accumulation step, which means when we drop into this now, that next move should be like this, right? Continuation to the upside, if Platinum is indeed doing what I'm saying it's doing. If not, and let me go to the cursor, get rid of this, get rid of this, right? If not, then the only thing we need to be concerned about, because metals and commodities will always do pretty well over time, right? Depending on demand. So if what I've just done isn't the case, then this pullback, the only thing we need to ascertain is whether or not it's going to run deeper into this pullback, yeah? Because we've already had capitulation over here. So that's effectively what we're doing. We're looking at the monthly and saying, right, it's dipping in, but what's it really reaching for? And this is what it's really reaching for. If you look at the weekly, and let me do this so I can just kind of move it up. If you look at the weekly, we've had a drop. It's already ran deep into this area of liquidity over here, which is again just another fractal of this one over here. So we are seeing pick up of buy side, right? Dips, doesn't come into the monthly LP, which means in hindsight that's not what it was looking for. It rallies, it drops all the way deeper, taps into the monthly LP, runs a little bit deeper into the monthly LP, and then runs really deep into the monthly LP to reach into this. The reason I'm going through all of this painstaking analysis, which seems insane, is because now if I remove the monthly and we make this white so we can see what's really going on, we know this is the LP that's controlling this move, right? Sorry, I said that wrong. We know that this LP is one that's controlling this recent move, yeah? And that's the impulse. Once you find the impulse, it's so much easier to ascertain the cross-through point. What that means is, now that we've ascertained the impulse, if price goes through this, yeah, then that is a very, very strong level for it to get through. If it doesn't stabilize here, if it doesn't respond from here, if it starts to run deeper into this and really starts to just effectively wipe it out completely. Sorry, I did that wrong. Wipe it out completely like this, so there's no LP left. At that point, if it doesn't respond and start to move higher, forget it. It's going lower, right? So being able to do this is very, very important, right? And it takes time. It takes time to understand all of this. There is a little bit of math involved, and I've just dropped down to the daily just to kind of see. That was your last, effectively, that was the last point where price shot. So you're talking, man, that's a massive move, man. 42% off a last liquidity grab. And then it's kind of got messy, and then it ran deeper and deeper, and you can see it all kind of fleshed out, and that's a pretty decent drop. So my expectation now going forward after all of that is that it's going to stabilize between this LP, which is 834 to 865, and I'm certainly not expecting anything to happen going into the remainder of the year. It will probably just either stabilize in this area, maybe run a little bit deeper, or maybe respond slightly from this, but I'm absolutely not expecting a bounce. I'm not expecting a drop. I'm just expecting stabilization right here, right? And then you also asked about versus palladium. So I can't remember for the life of me what the palladium is. It's this one here, XPD. All right, cool. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty aggressive, but again, I mean, look where palladium's coming into. Yeah, this is the monthly, and then we do the same again. So there's the dip, right? My guess would be the impulse. I mean, you can refine it a little bit more, but that's where the impulse would be between 871 and 958. Now, whether or not price is going to go down there, that's a pretty decent move. You can see that price ran all the way up and then all the way back down. That is practically full negation. So again, I'm thinking stabilization in this area. Maybe you get a little bit more of a dip. If we use the same logic. And I haven't had a chance to go through this. This is literally just on the fly. But if we use the same logic, and apply this kind of stair-stepping process to figure out, where the impulse is and what's in control of this full move, then the full negation has to be down here, right, at 958. That's the start of it. So if it does come back down to 958, which is pretty decent. I mean, we're talking. Oh, wow. Okay, so that's not working. That's really annoying. 1 second, guys. So you're talking roughly about another 8-9% move, possibly 10%, which is decent. But again, I would expect, just to keep it really simple, stabilization just here. So if I get rid of this and I get rid of this, that's what I'm expecting. A little bit of stabilization between these levels, and it's roughly around about 900 to around about 1,000-ish, somewhere there, right? So that's that. Hope that helps. I'll leave these levels on there. So if we just go back to the VIX. And then if I do ever go back to palladium or platinum, it will show up. Let's go back to Bitcoin. So yeah, cool. Awesome. Great analysis. Always interested to hear from someone who knows what they are talking about. Appreciate that, AJ. Thanks, man. Yeah. Look, like I said, guys, man, I mean, I've never claimed to be the only person that understands the markets, but I do claim that I understand the markets the way I look at them. Yeah. And it works for me. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It just works for me, I mean, I can't really show you anymore because, Borg is basically what used to be CHSB. It's just basically 2 candles. Very difficult. But I know many of you, I use this example all the time because it's the most recent example that I can use. I waited so long for price to get down to 11 cents, and I sold between 16, 17, and 18, on that portion that I bought CHSB down at 11 cents. I posted it everywhere. I was talking about it on Twitter. I was talking about it in the Discord, and I'm just patient enough to wait for all of that, so I don't know. It works for me. My intention is never to get anybody into trouble. I try to be careful when I talk about the things I talk about. I will piss a few people off, which I have done, with Binance. People said, oh, I wanted to buy it down here and look at it now. And, that's unfortunate. I do feel bad. If anybody's following along, even though I keep telling people not to. The whole point here is education. Right? I'm trying to teach people how to analyze the markets, right, and then use that information to make better informed decisions. And doing it in a way that isn't kind of all flashy and crazy and check me out and blah blah blah. And as such, there is going to be a byproduct of maybe a few people getting annoyed because, I missed this move or I missed that move because you said this and you said that. I understand that. I get that. It is unfortunate, but again, if people really pay attention, they'll understand. Actually, yeah, that's not what he said. He's always clear about the levels, and I think maybe in the last 3 years, there's been about 10 or 15 times when I've said, right, this is a quote me moment, and I haven't been wrong once on a quote me, and at least I don't think so. I'm pretty sure I haven't been wrong once on a quote me. So I'm very, very careful. Really, really careful. I don't want to get people into trouble. Personal thoughts on Solana, its recent little rally. Solana, let's take a look. Solana. Yeah, wow. Okay, that's pretty good. That's insane. Wow. Let's go to the daily so we can see a little bit more information. There we go. That's much better. Yeah, I mean, this is Bitcoin correlation. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That is pretty insane. That is a very, very nice move. Whether or not this is going to continue, whether or not I haven't looked at Solana, I don't, I haven't broken it down. I haven't looked into its, full sort of breakdown. And let me just check to make sure desktop audio is off. Yes, it is. I haven't looked at a complete breakdown of this, but just going based off the chart, that is a very, very nice move. And if I look at the monthly, I would expect it will take a lot for Solana to basically come all the way back down here, if at all, right? But again, pullback, right? Right now, when you look at a chart like that, people see things in a lot of different ways, right? Novices or people who are not used to the cryptocurrency market don't look at all of these candles. They see this one, okay, and this one. They're the only two candles that they see. They react off those two candles. Green, the color, has to mean strong, bullish money, right? Because that's the way we're conditioned to believe. Big candles have to mean strength, because that's the way people are conditioned. So they only look at these two candles and say, I'm buying. And then it starts to pull back and pull back and pull back. They grab it at 45, 46, 47, and then on a healthy pullback, Solana's at 34, 32, between 30 and 34, say around about here, and they start stressing out. They're down on their investment, and then it becomes, I'm a hodler for life, where what they should be doing is saying, all right, look, we've had a drop first, we've had a nice recovery, and it's just created a new all-time high. Great. It might continue, sure, absolutely, but that's a gamble I'm personally not willing to take. I would much rather see a nice little pullback, and then as it starts to stabilize, all the crap that I usually talk about, then I'd consider whether or not Solana would be something that I'd want to buy into. Then I'd look into it, what's it doing, da-da-da, 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 and then kind of take it from there. So, yeah, that's Solana. Nice move, but I'd personally wait for a pullback, me personally. CRO will take over after BNB business due to the... Why is there a heart in the middle of the screen? Due to the BlackRock partnership with CRO with the Bitcoin ETF. CRO. Let's go back to the VIX. Kronos, yeah? Yeah, Kronos. Oh, crypto.com. Yep. This is Brian Armstrong's company, right? Yeah, I mean, you look at this and it's like, well, let me go to the daily so we've got a bit more information to work with. You see, all right, that makes more sense to me. Yeah. When you're looking at, and this is tying into Bitcoin moving and nothing else really, really moving at all. This makes more sense to me. So you look at Bitcoin and then you look at this and you're like, yeah, okay, CRO's moving. Now, remember, we had to jump down to the daily chart to see this. And I know I'm not going into what you've actually said for Egenda. I'll do in a sec, but that's a nice little impulse. That I like that. Probably expecting somewhere around about 85. Sorry, where are we? I can't see the sun's. Yeah, around about 11 cents. I would that would be the expectation. And that continue, because look, this is a really nice ramp up. Yeah, so it's ramping, and then we might see this is nice inflow of money. coming into, CRO or crypto.com. So I would expect a little bit more of an upside. But again, the pullback is where it's really at, guys, right? Like I said, I know there's many people, right, that have purchased and been buying into into Bitcoin or some of these other alts because they're positioning themselves, right, for the next bull run, which may or may not come, for months or potentially years. Who knows? But we have to. I have to be mindful of the way that I like to look at analysis and what I'm looking for, and it's all on the pullback now. That's the main thing that I'm focused on, just the pullback, nothing else. I just want to see the pullback, and then I can ascertain what's happening. Got plenty of time going into the remainder of the year now. Certainly no rush to do anything. So, we're in a pretty strong position, I think. Sorry, it was supposed to be going out of business. I'm driving right now. Yeah, no worries, man. Stop. Well, watch, yeah, but don't type, man, when you're driving. But yeah, to be honest, I think crypto.com, should be okay. It's not actually. No. Sorry, let me be really clear. One second. No. I want to be absolutely clear what I'm saying here. I don't want to give wrong information out. Coinbase. Sorry, I'm getting Coinbase and crypto.com confused. Yeah, forgive me. Coinbase is Brian Armstrong is the CEO of Coinbase. That's the one that's going to be around, obviously, for quite a while. Crypto.com, I remember now that I actually got a letter or an email, from them about a bunch of different things. Not an exchange that I've got any interest in whatsoever. Now, whether or not, now, whether or not, they continue, whether or not they do well, whether or not Binance collapses completely, whether it doesn't, I don't know. I really don't know. There's so many things, guys, right, that you can look at, and you can always find a case for an absolute Armageddon, and you can always find a case, right, for a bullish narrative. You can always do that, always. But you have to look at this as a pair of scales. I've said this so many times. On one side you've got bearish, on the other side you've got bullish, right? And you're putting on there all of the things, that are giving you, the bearish narrative, the world economy, the US dollar, the war, the lack of liquidity, this, that, alt's not moving, but Bitcoin on its own, etc. All of that stuff on one side, and then you put all of the stuff, that makes the case for a bullish, narrative, and you see where the scales go, and for me, we are still quite heavily leaned towards, the bearish side. You look at the kind of fear and greed index, which I think is a complete load of nonsense, right? But that's effectively what I'm saying. It's like a bullish, bearish index, and we're still quite heavily to the bearish side. Now, obviously, as that starts to move closer and closer and closer to neutral, then you can start to ascertain, is it worth jumping into the market? But I will also say those people who have the balls to get in when the indicator is very, very heavily leaned toward the left, bearish, they're the ones that will make the most money, right? Because they are taking the larger risk. Yeah. I'm quite happy to be in the middle. This is the point that I've been trying to say to people for years. Stay in the middle. If you stay in the middle, it gives you so much more confidence because the analysis that you're doing, right, there is additional weight to it. There's so many more things that you can look at, right, that give you confidence that your analysis is correct. And then you get the bulk of the move. Yeah. You might not get all of it. Maybe that one person is in way before you and he makes 1,000% and you only make 800% or 600% or 500%. But who cares? That's the point. People are driven by fear and people are driven by greed. I'm not into or wanting to get a fix. I don't need a fix. What I need is to get into the market, right, and know that when I close my eyes at night, I'm not going to be waking up in the middle of the night checking my investment because I'm scared. I've got no interest in that. I used to do that. Don't want to do that anymore. So this is why I like to be really cautious about the way that I invest because I want to be on the right side of things, and have the confidence that I'm 90% sure we're going to go for a multi-year run. Then it's just a question of fixing one problem. Patience. That's it. The only thing you have to fix when you've done all of that I've just said is patience. You just got to wait and leave it, and have an exit strategy. If you do all of the stuff prior to what I've just said, and you get in early and you're buying and you're doing all of this. There's too many variables, man. You've got to think. You're panicking. Was I right? Oh yeah, okay. Do I get out now? Oh, this is going to the moon. You just all of you're basically giving the market permission to just smash you in the face, and play with your emotions. May I ask what makes you believe Coinbase will survive a long period? Just a few words, perhaps. I don't. Free Gender does, I believe. Yeah, so Free Gender is basically saying basically Coinbase will take over after BNB business, due to the BlackRock partnership with Coinbase for the Bitcoin ETF. So yeah, Jesse, I don't believe one way or another when it comes to Coinbase. I'm indifferent. Yeah, I've got no stake in it, so I don't know. Oh wow! All right, come on, guys, man. Not you guys. I'm talking about families. I'm in a chat. I've got like 40 messages, 50 messages. Really not interested. All right, cool. So yeah, I think that was a pretty decent stream. And again, because there's a little bit more going on right now, I'm going to try my best to jump on, and talk about a few things. But we've been going for roughly about an hour, which I think it's a reasonable time, to kind of jump off. If you're listening to this stream either now or later and you're not already in the Discord, the link's in the description below. You're more than welcome. There's kind of a group of us in there, and we all try to stay on top of a lot of different things, and keep each other focused on what we believe to be, the correct context that we're seeing within the marketplace. So again, everybody's welcome. And if there's a question that you wanted to ask and I don't get round to it today, or you didn't manage to basically, type it in the chat, just jump in the Discord and throw it in there. I'm pretty active in there. And if I don't answer it, guaranteed there'll be somebody there that will know the answer to it anyway. So yeah, when it comes to the analysis, if we just do a very quick summary, Bitcoin rebalance point 37,417. Need to see the reaction there, the price sensitivity. If it continues going, there's a lot for it to get through. If it gets into the 40s, the pullback is the most important thing. The baseline is 32,000, right? So 32,000, that's the key level. Been hit many, many times, and we want to see whether or not, as it starts to pull back now, whether that structure is what's going to keep us in a relatively loose bull market narrative, right? And then obviously Binance, not seeing any indication that Binance wants to continue, on this so-called Bitcoin strength. So again, any movement to the downside on Binance, as it starts to move lower, 230 to 220, this level on Binance here is what I'm focused the most on, right? Same thinking. As it starts to pull back and it hits between 220 and 230, does it start to create the structure that's solid, or does it go for? Let me go to the other chart. No, it's not on this one. It is this one. Or does it go down to, that 200 level and then just basically punch through, right? So with all that said, I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend an hour with me. I hope you found this, informative and useful. And I'll see you all in the Discord. Thank you for your time. I'll restart this video now. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, and thanks, Free Gender. Obviously, I really appreciate the donations or whatever you want to call these. I don't even know what they are, but or what they're called. But yeah, either way, I really, really appreciate it, man. Thank you. And cool. All right, guys. I'll speak to you soon. Ciao for now.